Hello and welcome to the Horror Hangout, a podcast where film fans get together to discuss the best and worst the horror genre has to offer. And when we're very lucky, we get together with some of the filmmakers bringing new scares to your screens as well. And today is one of those occasions. I am joined by director, and we'll dive into his other talents as well, Jermey Ashley, who brought us Meathook to the screens. Jeremy, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing all right, Andy. How you doing tonight?
No, I am very well. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. This one's been a long time coming. We've been wrestling with our calendars for a little while, right?
We have. It was a little touch and go there for a while, but we finally figured it out. We got it on the books, and here we are. I know
Yeah.
it's a little bit late over in the UK right now. I know you're getting close to burning the midnight oil. You're doing back-to-back interviews, so I just want to say I appreciate you being willing to book it and doing so much work in order to make it happen. So thank
Well,
you.
there are some things that it's worth staying up late for, and a good horror movie is one of them, Jeremy.
You're
And
damn right.
before we get into a little bit more about you, let's not bury the lead. Let's talk about Meat Hook to begin with. Give us the elevator pitch if we were scrolling through our streaming options to watch something. Why whose attention is Meat Hook gonna grab?
Ooh, Meathook's gonna grab the attention of slasher fans mostly, and fans of horror comedies. That's kind of our bread and butter right there, is what we do. So, in terms of our kind of sales pitch or elevator pitch that I like to give to people, I usually like to say that it's an award-winning slasher film that delivers both festival credibility. We went on the festival circuit, won a lot of awards. We got strong streaming appeal. It was shot entirely in Los Angeles. It was co-led by awesome actor named Havan Baraka. He's a writer as well. Wonderful screenwriter in his own right. It won top honors at Culver City, Golden State Film Festival, Chicago Horror Film Festival. It's a really awesome film. Now, in terms of the film itself, the way that I like to describe it is I like to start off by asking people a question. I like to ask, what happens to the final girl of every slasher film after the credits roll? And that was kind of the jumping off point that I had for Meat Hook, was trying to explore this very uncharted aspect about slasher films, about what happens to the character after the events of the slasher film. Now, usually when you pick up with the character afterwards, either they get killed off in the opening scenes of the film or they're just completely written out. So, being able to explore how the events of a first film, how a tragedy, losing friends and going through this horrific experience really changes somebody. And we wanted to explore that with our lead character, Jordyn. So basically, what happens is years after this horrific massacre of her friends by this infamous killer, our final girl, Jordyn, she struggles with her tragic past. And while attending college, Jordyn tries rebuilding the pieces of her life with encouragement from her roommates and friends. But when a young couple is murdered in the same manner as her friends, Jordyn is forced to confront her past head on with the help from a true crime podcaster with a tragic background of his own. As the bodies pile up, it's up to Jordyn and her true crime podcaster friend, plus an over the hill detective, to stop the killer before he finishes what he started. So that's the basic elevator pitch right there. And that was kind of the genesis of the film and why I wanted to tell this story.
Yeah, and a wonderful, fun concept. We'll talk about the tone of the film shortly, but for me, we know like anyone who listens to the show will know I'm a big slasher fan. So you didn't have to sell very hard to me. As soon as I had the pitch, and to be honest, I can see your wonderful poster behind you as well. There are few more evocative weapons. Maybe your meat hooks up there with your iconic slasher weapons right there, like the Holy Trinity there. Meat hook, machete, chainsaw, maybe.
I would say so. I would say maybe the butcher knife is
The
up there
butcher
as
knife.
well. That's
That's your
that's
Mount
definitely.
Rushmore then.
Yeah. The Mount Rushmore of horror slasher killer weapons. Although I would say that the hook is kind of underutilized when it comes to how it's been used in horror films. Now you can kind of name on one hand exactly how many slasher killers use a hook in their films. Now, obviously, the go-to is I Know What You Did Last Summer, but that's a little bit more of like a fish hook, which is a little bit more elongated. Ours is a much more kind of shorter, pared down weapon of just a straight kind of meat hook. So, you know, Jason is synonymous with the machete. Michael Myers, synonymous with the butcher knife, Leatherface with the chainsaw, but there's not a whole lot of killers aside from the I Know What You Did Last Summer killer, and maybe some kind of cult underground classics like Three on a Meat Hook. Yeah, and there's some meat hooks in Texas Chainsaw as well. You know, you don't want to discount that, but on the whole, not a whole lot of slasher killers with the meat hook as their primary weapon. So I thought that was a really fun weapon to incorporate with our killer. And although he does kill people in other methods, because you got to switch it up a little bit, you got to have a little
Little
variety.
variety, right?
100%. But the meat hook being the primary weapon, I feel like was a really great choice, and I'm really happy that we're able to showcase that. And the meat hook, it being the title of the film is kind of a character in and of itself. So when it came time to finding just the right meat hook for our film, I did a lot of searching, a lot of digging around, trying to find the perfect one that had just the right characteristics to it, that would kind of make it stand out and be unique. So after lots of searching and digging around, I found one on eBay from like somewhere in the Midwest, like some really like old weathered looking meat hook, and purchased that. And then our awesome makeup artist, Yun Nam, she was able to create some prosthetic duplicates of it that were made of rubber and plastic that we're able to use for like close-up shots where it's actually like, hitting a character or something like that. So I'm really proud of the meat hook that we're able to get in this one.
I love it how, like, people talking about a prop, an item, a location as, another character in the film. Sometimes people leave that description at just there and we're assumed we'll take that on board. Of course, the very fact that we have someone on board here with you, Jeremy, who could then explain exactly how this became a character and really give it a fleshed out backstory. This is someone who knows his onions, everybody, who's really got into this creation of
Thank
this
you.
character, this film, this weapon. And on that note, let's rewind a little bit. We'll return to Meat Hook shortly, but now think of this as a little bit of a free therapy session, if you will. Let's go back into where it all began for you, Jeremy. Where did horror get its own hooks into you as a fan, as a filmmaker? Where did it all begin?
No pun intended, hooks
Yeah.
into me. You know what? That's a very loaded question right there, and as I feel like I'm sure it is for you and many other horror fans, how you exactly got started off with this. When it comes to slashers in particular, though, one of my earliest memories of falling in love with horror films and slasher films in general was being a very young wee lad, if I can borrow a term from your side of the pond.
You can indeed.
Um, watching the Nightmare on Elm Street films, which, if you ask me, is my favorite slasher series, just because of the nostalgia that I have for it, as well as the amount of imagination and creativity that these particular slasher films are able to incorporate into their films that some other slasher films aren't able to, such as very creative kills, very varied locations, as opposed to like a Jason Voorhees, who you usually see it's in the woods. You're not going to go, anywhere else other than that, unless you go to space. And I think it's best
There's nowhere in
not to talk
between.
about that one.
Jason's in like the New Jersey woodland or outer space, and nowhere in between. Where is my Jason in Hawaii?
I know. Where's that? I know, kind of like Beetlejuice in Hawaii, but
Exactly.
Jason in Hawaii. Although to be fair, we all know that he was in New York for a very short spell, which was basically 15 minutes of the last part of part eight.
Barely a
But
day trip.
exactly, that's a little evening short excursion, and how the hell they're in Camp Crystal Lake and they went from a lake all the way to New York is another question that
On a single boat, a paddle steamer, I think, right?
I know, no, I don't think anybody's really truly explained that one to any good degree. But so Nightmare on Elm Street, honestly, is really my first foray and my first love of slasher films is where it really started off at. Um, outside of Nightmare on Elm Street, I really grew up with a lot of other classic slasher films that I fell in love with, particularly ones from the 80s. Of course, Child's Play being one of them. Hellraiser freaked me out as a kid, particularly part three. Left me with a lot of nightmares trying to fall asleep at night and picturing the silhouette of Pinhead creeping into the room. So that was always a big influence. And then as a kid, the Leprechaun movies were always in heavy rotation, especially the original one. And then later on, the Friday the 13th, which remain one of my favorites, despite in many ways its simplicity, but also its predictability. And you can't forget the OG Halloween, of course. That's one of the classics and way up there. The first two being my favorites. We can kind of talk about the other ones to varying degrees, but the first two classics. I mean, no questions asked. When it comes to other slasher films outside of the ones that I kind of grew up with, Scream, as you could probably tell by seeing Meathook, was a very big influence on me as a filmmaker and just a fan of horror in general, based on its meta humor and its originality of being able to create this postmodern slasher film that leans into the tropes and cliches, but being able to offer something new and interesting. So Scream was a huge game changer for me and a very big influence on Meathook, when it comes to the comedy horror influence in that. And then, of course, I love a lot of the deep cut kind of slasher ones too. I mean, you got like, Sleepaway Camp, Psycho, obviously classic. The Final Girl being a more modern slasher film, which I'm a huge fan of, as well. I'm not sure if you've seen that one before, if many of your audiences
Oh
have,
yeah,
but
well, we're fast approaching 500 episodes. You're talking our language. I think when we look at these lists of slashers, I mean, Jeremy, you've brought something back to my mind. We've covered a lot of the big franchises, and we're at the back half of some of those big franchises now. Only one Leprechaun film in our history, though. We've only ever
mm,
done the original. So
might need to change that.
maybe in a notebook somewhere, I'll be putting your name against the time we need to revisit Leprechaun 2. There is a particularly good lawnmower-based murder in that, as I recall.
100%, 100%. Yeah, and maybe around Patrick's Day, which is coming up pretty soon, would be a good time for it.
That'd
So
be well timed indeed. But yeah,
100%,
like
100%.
you clearly show you've got a lot of great slasher history, which has clearly colored your fandom growing up. And then tell us about when you started making movies. Was it something you did as a hobby that developed? Did you go to school to learn? Where did you actually begin to take this into a something you wanted to do for your life, for your creative work?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I didn't really seriously consider pursuing a career in filmmaking until much later on. But when it comes to how I started off filmmaking, I always draw it back to the origins of when I was a kid, probably 10, 11, 12 years old. I remember my mom coming home with this used video camera that had, the VHS slot on the side. You put the tape in, you cord on the VHS, and boom, you pop it out, you watch it. So very early on, just creating very little short, cheap films and kind of learning the craft of it. Learning editing, editing from one VHS player onto the next one, trying to put a scene together in a very old, archaic, and not very helpful way. But that was kind of how I started off right there, just making that. And then later on in middle school and high school, I had a group of friends and they were big fans of films as well. So we would get together on weekends, I write scripts during the week, and then on the weekend get together, spend the whole day night shooting it, and then sit around the TV later on, edit it together and watch it and kind of crack jokes at all the mistakes and everything that we made. But it was a really fun way to kind of dip my toes into that space and kind of learn a little bit. So that's how I kind of started off, and then kind of took a little hiatus from high school until late 20s when I returned to it and took some more filmmaking classes and really decided that this was my calling and this was something that I really wanted to pursue seriously. So after taking a class at community college, I decided to major in filmmaking, and then it came time to transfer to a school, and I decided that I wanted to go to a place that was a really good film school with a good reputation. At the time, I was living in Northern California, up in Sacramento. And I decided to make the plunge down to Southern California in Los Angeles to go to a film school out here. And that was about 10 years ago, and I haven't looked back since. And during that time at film school, created a bunch of short films, networked and met a lot of really awesome filmmakers and people in my class who later worked on Meathook and a lot of my other projects after school. So I've just carried that with it ever since then. And here we go. I got my first feature film Meathook out right now, and I'm just really excited to finally have something like this under my belt, something that I'm really proud of, and it seems like a lot of audiences are resonating with. And we just hit Tubi pretty recently too, so I'm really excited that we're on some big streaming platforms and people are able to discover the film. And I'm really hoping to make a lot more movies after this. I'm in the process of writing a couple other ones at the moment, and it's a really long and arduous process making a film, from the inception of writing it to actually filming it and post production and everything else. So it's a lot of work, but at the end of the day, we do it because we love telling stories. We do it because we love this medium of filmmaking, and I hope you guys like the next stuff that I have in store for you.
Well, we shall look forward to it. I'll probably tease that at the end for you. But actually, one thing I didn't want to leave to the end of our discussion here, because we always get round to this bit and we talk about films, we get people excited to see them, and then we tell them when they're getting ready to what's next on my playlist here, talk about where they can find it. So Tubi is your main platform that you're on right now. Is there anywhere
Yeah.
else that people could
So you can
also go
find us on
find it?
Yeah, so you can find us on Tubi right now. We just hit on that streaming service late last month, so it's pretty recent on there. We're also on Amazon Prime for rent or buy, so you can check us out on there. We're also on a few YouTube channels as well. One of them being Kings of Horror. So you could check us out on there. It's got the ads, but you could skip through them. We're also on the YouTube channel Shocks and Docs, which is run by our distributor, Terror Films. Terror Films is also the distributor of a bunch of other very popular indie horror films, such as the Hell House LLC series, The Taking of Deborah Logan. So, really happy to partner with this very awesome distribution company in order to get this film out in the world. So, yeah, I mean, add it to your Tubi watch list. Add it to your playlist on YouTube and wherever you guys watch movies at. I think you guys are going to have a good time.
Yeah, I certainly had a lot of fun. I mean, say I preaching to the choir here when it comes to slasher movies. So one thing I really wanted to let's if we return to Meat Hook now, talking about the choices that you made, I know that you wanted to lean into the comedic side of horror as well, things that work so well together, and then by extension, is there a little bit, I mean, you've mentioned it's your favorite series, a little bit of that Wes Craven DNA has snuck in there with you, talking about the some of the meta commentary that you bring out in the part of the comedy as well. Was that something that you knew from day one you wanted to include, or is it something that evolved as you began working through the concept and the script?
Yeah, I kind of knew from the beginning that that was an approach that I wanted to take with it, especially since the main subject matter of following a final girl and being able to lean into, much like Scream did, all the cliches and tropes of the slasher genre and being able to make fun of those a little bit and kind of poke fun, but also taking it a little step further. As you know, we have a few different kind of fourth wall breaks and kind of winks directly at the audience throughout the film. So I knew I wanted to do something a little bit more than what Scream did and kind of test the audience a little bit and try to give them something a little bit different from what they're used to and what they expect. Now, whether or not that kind of tone worked and was consistent throughout is up to interpretation from the viewer. But I did feel like otherwise, if we didn't have that sort of humor in there, it would be a very by the numbers, just straightforward slasher film, which is there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. There's a million awesome straightforward slasher films out there, but I know that just for the sake of wanting to do something a little bit different and want to push the envelope and tell a little bit different story in a different way, we wanted to kind of lead into that comedic aspect. We really wanted to lean into the meta humor part of it and kind of inviting the audience in order to kind of laugh at the film and the intricacies in the horror slasher genre in general, but also have a good time being scared. So I knew from the beginning that was something I wanted to do. And in addition to Scream, I mean, there's lots of other really awesome postmodern slasher or horror films out there which lean into that aspect. One of them being Cabin in the Woods, which is another film that I like to compare this one to as well, which is an awesome one of my favorite films that has come out probably in the last couple decades.
Such a wonderful surprise as well. Things like Cabin in the Woods. I don't know what your experience was, but we were lucky enough to have known so little about it going in. I think they marketed the hell out of it perfectly, where you get your core premise, which as the film presents itself as, but you don't really get all of the other background information until you get into the film itself, and you such a delightful surprise going through a film like that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's part of the joy of that film right there is that you don't go in expecting it to really make that twist and turn until you're actually in there. So the way that they marketed it was fantastic. Love Cabin in the Woods. And it's a one-off, it's not like, like every other horror film where it's like, oh, we gotta throw a sequel on top of it. It's gotta be, a whole cinematic universe now. It's like, no, this is a great one-off film. Keep it at that. We don't really need to, stretch it beyond that. Although there is a lot of potential in it because of the kind of, vast world that they created with all these different monsters and stuff, to really explore that. But I love that it's just kind of a going in and out and that's it kind of deal.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing. I love the we talk about ambition and the creativity of filmmakers, but there is a lot to be said for when you can have some restraint as well. I think they've been incredibly restrained with Cabin in the Woods because I imagine I've not looked at the numbers, but it must have done well enough to warrant doing more with. There's certainly enough attention for it. You could probably watch video essays until you're old and grey about the lore of a character that has 2 seconds of screen time. I know I have certainly seen, and this is a deep cut by a lot of people's standards, I'm sure, but I've glared at very, very pixelated zoom ins of one of those pictures, which apparently is was meant to show some of the special infected from the Left 4 Dead video games
Oh, really?
as
Okay.
creatures that are apparently in there, and apparently there was very early conversations, whether this is true or
Uh-huh.
internet bump, where apparently there was talk of them doing a sponsored crossover with the game that was huge at the time of the
Oh,
release as well. And I kind of love that these things don't happen. They become the modern mythologies, don't they? They become the Tim Burton's Superman. They become
exactly.
the George A. Romero's Resident Evils of this world. Things that there is, for good or for ill, if they ever existed,
And
a
some of these
great
behind
deal
the
of
scene
excitement. Yeah.
Yeah, and some of these behind the scenes things are almost as interesting as the films themselves. Being able to explore, the lost Superman Tim Burton movie, or the lost bloody cut of Friday the 13th Part 7. That's the joy of being film fans is that, we just geek out over this kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
And I think films like Meathook, to bring it to your work here, are the type of thing which, because of the way that you engage the audience in the process, that you have those smiles and the winks to them. I think particularly for your hardcore horror fans, this is something they can really resonate in. This is sort of a club that you can be a part of. You're inviting them to turn to their friend in the cinema that maybe isn't so up on slashers and say, what they're doing here is this, and you're inviting people to join in that joke with you, which I really enjoyed while I was watching the movie. You mentioned we got a lot of good experience and a good exposure at festivals. Have you had the chance to be in the room and watch an audience react to it in real time? How was that?
Oh, it's very surreal. spending that much time creating something, you're not really sure how people are going to react to it. Especially when you spend so much time with it. And films oftentimes take many years to create. And during that time, you show it to people and you get some feedback from friends and colleagues, but you never really know how just the average moviegoer is going to react to it. So being able to be in a theater and being able to experience that and being able to hear the laughter from some people when a joke lands, or being able to hear some audible gasps when something terrifying or particularly shocking happens is the world. It's a drug and a high that you can't buy from any corner, and it's a beautiful thing. Just knowing that your sensibility and the story that you wanted to tell connected with somebody and made them feel something. Either something good like laughter, or something, a little terrifying like being scared, or or resonating with the characters' pain and trauma, such as, Jordyn at the loss of friends, which I feel like so many people can relate to, which is one of the main reasons why I also wanted to tell the story as well, was having somebody dealing with the loss of somebody very, very close to them and how they're able to overcome that and rise to the occasion and be a better version of themselves. Um, so yeah,
Yeah,
I don't
I
know.
mean,
I don't know if I
like,
answered your
no,
question.
no, that's great. Like talking, I mean, it must be very, as you say, very surreal to see an audience react to it because obviously you get to choose what you intend. You don't get to choose what they take from it. Were you surprised by anything you heard an audience react to? Were the things that they reacted differently to what you'd thought they might?
I think everybody reacted how I kind of expected them to, through most of the scenes, particularly the comedy bits. I know I usually hear a lot of laughter in the theater whenever we have the therapist scene,
Mhm.
which is very comedic right there, and I'm really happy about how that one turned out in terms of the pacing and how some of the jokes land. Um, so yeah, I was able to go to a few different in-person screenings for the film. The first one I was able to go to was in Chicago at the Chicago Horror Film Festival. And I had some audience members come up later on and tell me how much that they enjoyed the film and the comedy and the horror about it. So it's those moments right there where people come up afterward and tell you, like, this worked for me and I think you did a good job. It's just, it's that pat on the back, which just makes you feel like, I did a good job. I pulled it off. I was able to ring this circus together and pull off the show, and now we can go home and
That's
figure
great.
out figure
Like
out the next one.
to hear what when someone's seeing your movie to actually hear like something you created is good and like I don't know you, we're not blood related, we
Could be.
yeah, but we're you don't know me and you still were moved enough by something I've created. That must be a wonderful moment. You talked a little bit about Jordan's journey in particular as a character and her basis on a lot of sort of final girl characters throughout the genre. Was there any of your genre favorites that you wanted to give her elements of, or were you very focused on making her own entity?
Yeah, you know what? That's a very good question. I haven't gotten that one before. Obviously, with Scream being such a huge influence, Nev Campbell and the character of Sidney Prescott was very much at the forefront of my mind, especially since that character going into the first film is already kind of dealing with the trauma of the loss of her mother. So you kind of have that to bounce off of right there. And then obviously in the subsequent sequels, she's dealing with the trauma of the loss of her friends as well, but we never really explore it in the way that I feel like we do in Meathook. Um, Other characters and kind of inspirations that I use for Jordyn, that I like to cite, one of them being Chris from Friday the 13th Part 3. She's one of the few returning Friday the 13th final girls to come back after a run-in with Jason. Now, kind of similar to Meat Hook, we don't really see what happens to Chris in the events of, whatever happened to her before, because she wasn't in, part two. We just see it in a flashback sequence, much in the same way that we do in Meathook. So I would compare those pretty similarly as well. Those are probably the main ones that I would probably say. I mean, obviously, a lot of other kind of mainstays of the slasher genre there. I mean, Ginny from Friday the 13th Part 2, one of my favorite final girls for her strength and kind of resilience that she has. I think Jordyn carries some of those aspects as well. Um, I would say maybe a little bit of Julie from I Know What You Did Last Summer, just because, we're leaning into that postmodern aspect of the era of slashers. But those three are probably the main influences when it comes to the character of Jordyn.
Okay. And again, influences aside, what I like is that you created something of her very own as well. And we get to go on this journey with her where we actually do explore. There are some, comedy aside, there are some thoughtful moments where we get to see what she's going through as a character and how other characters react to that, some more sympathetically than others. Um, I mean, obviously, as much as I could dwell on the truly most relatable character for folks like me in terms of a podcaster, but talk to me about your detective here again. Like, where did this character come together? How did you choose to how to cast this sort of pivotal role in the story?
The character of Sawyer, Detective Sawyer, is a very fun one, and I know that a lot of audience members who walk away watching the film usually cite the detective as one of their favorite characters, and I would really chalk that up to the performance that our actor Buddy Doc Clements gives, and the kind of effortless charm that he's able to convey through his character. He's just a likable guy. I mean, he just has this presence on screen. He's a little bit larger guy, but he's just like kind of like a Santa Claus. He's so lovable and kind of huggable, and just a very lighthearted personality that he brings to it. Very much unlike a hard-nosed detective who's on the case and he's going to do it. He's cracking these little jokes here and there. He's always referencing his diet and how he wish he can eat these sweets and stuff, but he's kind of stuck, eating this very bland food. So that's an aspect of his character right there. So he was very fun, and when it come to casting the character of Detective Sawyer, we saw a lot of different actors, but I felt it was Buddy Doc Clements' kind of effortless charm that really won me over. He has the detective look, but it's also the likability factor that he has. And in a lot of slasher films, you have some police presence, some character. I'm thinking like, Black Christmas, a Scream to a degree with the sheriff, and you have Dewey in there as well doing some investigation. So I feel like that's kind of one of the mainstays of the slasher genre is the detective character that helps our lead protagonist solve the crime or find the killer or whatever. So early on, I knew I wanted to have that character in there in order to help give some exposition on what happens to Jordyn before the events of the film happening, but also to help unravel this mystery of who this killer is and this detective who was hunting him down before, and it's kind of the case that got away from him. So he kind of has this personal attachment to wanting to capture this killer and find out who he is, and kind of have this be a nice ribbon on his career that he can kind of end with and feel comfortable leaving the job. So that's kind of where the character of the detective came from. And again, so many people liked him that I'm really happy with the casting choice that we made with Buddy Clements. Such a nice guy. I think he's a band teacher, to be quite honest with you. He in addition to being an actor, he's an orchestral teacher, and he just loves orchestral music. And even during the making of the film, he was making these short compositions of like scary themes, and he'd be like, "Jeremy, I was thinking about Meathook, and I wanted to send this over to you." So I listened to it, and he's a very accomplished musician in his own right. So was very, very happy to have him on board.
Oh, great. And obviously, for an independent filmmaker, multi-talented people are always beneficial to learn
Oh
under,
yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Incredible. I mean, we mentioned how so many great films might invite a sequel, but not not get one. And I don't want to dive into spoilers for Meathook here, but by hook or by crook, you are still working in the slasher genre. Are you tempted for a sequel, Jeremy?
Ah, You know what? I knew that when we put this movie out, this question was going to come up about if there is a sequel, what would it be? Are you interested in making one? And to be 100% honest with you, Andy, when I was making this thing, I never conceptualized it with the idea of a sequel or a series or a trilogy or anything like that in mind. Although leaving it obviously kind of open-ended a little bit there for that opportunity should it arise. Now, when I was thinking about what would a sequel to Meat Hook look like, a couple years ago, this idea came to mind, and I thought of what might be a fun idea to explore with a sequel, and it was something that I thought would be interesting and a nice continuation of the story. But I think it was maybe sometime late last year that I started thinking about it again, maybe after somebody asked me the question again, and I really came up with a really fun idea that I thought would be obviously a great continuation of the story, but would be such a bonkers, crazy idea for a sequel that nobody has ever approached or done before in this style that would completely throw people for a loop and is very much in line with the meta humor that we have and a nice kind of continuation of that sort of thing. So I don't want to give too much away. Obviously, the possibilities for a sequel all depends on how successful we are with this film. So at the end of the day, if people clamor for one, if the movie is successful enough and somebody wants to hand me over a check and say, "Hey, we'd love to make a sequel." I mean, we do have a really awesome, fun idea in mind that I think would just subvert everybody's expectations, but in the best way possible.
See, there we go. So basically, what Jeremy's saying, everyone listening, is this is on you. So if you see Meat Hook and you want to see it return, hit refresh on that stream, watch it again, get those solid reviews in, and
Please.
we'll see what goes from there. We'll see if we can get him the attention that would garner such kind of behavior as to do a follow up to it. Jeremy, before I ask you our most important questions that we do any close any interview with, just a bit of admin to make sure it's cleaned up. If people have heard you talk today, they want to follow, they know where to watch the movie itself, but they want to follow you to see what's coming up next. Where do they go? Social media is not what it used to be, so where's the best place to find you?
So usually you can find me best on Instagram or Facebook. And for both of those platforms, you can find me at Jermey Ashley. And my first name's spelled kind of weird. So it's Jermey. It's not the traditional Jeremy. So Jermey. Ashley, spelled just like Ashley, at both Instagram and Facebook. You can find me on there. You can also find our Meat Hook page on both of those as well, at Meat Hook Movie. We also have a website, meathookmovie.com, where you can check us out at. We have trailers, reviews. We also have a page where you can pre-order a Blu-ray and a DVD of the film. We also have t-shirts, posters. We got all the merch you can need. Spaceballs, the flamethrower. Shh. The kids love that. We don't have any flamethrowers just yet, but maybe sometime in the
Working
future we'll put some meat hooks on there.
incredible. And talking of your merch again, I know most people join us on the audio format. If you want to see someone with a healthy bit of merch there, that hat is looking pretty sweet, Jeremy, I must say.
And a little backstory on this one, as you've seen the film, you might know that there is somebody in our film that ends up crazy enough wearing a hat that says Meat Hook writer director on it, and this is the same hat which you
The very
see
same.
in the film, the very same one, yes, which will one day, after Meat Hook becomes a huge cult classic hit, will be worth millions of dollars. So I'm going to hang on to this one so that I can pay my
Yeah.
retirement home fees sometime in the near future.
Gonna be
So
the jewel in the crown of like some Neo-Planet Hollywood somewhere in
it's
the
it's
distant
either that
future.
or it's going to be the mask or the hook itself or something, which I have all of. I got everything. I got the costume. So if the sequel time ever comes, we're prepared and raring to go.
Amazing. Well, it's been great talking to you, Jeremy, talking about Meathook. I certainly do recommend people, especially if you love a slasher, you check that out and support independent film, of course, which is more important now than ever before.
Yes.
The big questions, though, I couldn't let such a slasher fan come by without giving you a very specific slasher question. Now,
Oh shit. Here we go.
normally, if you're throwing out a who would you rather find yourself up against, I feel like Freddy, Jason, Michael. That's too easy for someone like you, Jeremy. That's vanilla. You probably thought about that every single way around it.
You got to give
So
me something harder than that,
let
Andy.
me
Come
let
on.
me give you like another preference. Choosing between these three, I'm gonna go. We brought him up once, so we'll have the leprechaun in there.
Okay.
We're already following diminutive killers, so let's stick with that theme and then say Chucky, of course. And then a third one, we'll go a little taller, but you've mentioned it before, so I'll bring her up. Angela. Child
Ah.
or adult Angela, you can choose your flavor of that one.
Ah. Okay.
So the three of those are option. Let's say that you can ally with one of them and the other two are going to team up to get you.
Oh
Where are
shit.
you going?
Wow. That's a tough one. I'm inclined to want to ally up with either Leprechaun or Chucky just based on the fact that they have the supernatural edge to
There's
them.
some magic there, right?
I'm just saying. Whereas Angelina, she's kind of limited by, the worldly stuff. She could probably get taken out by Leprechaun. She might be able to be gotten the drop on by Chucky. So I don't know. I'm gonna say,
But she's going to be allied with the other one as well. You see, they're going to be working as a
oh,
team.
this is a tough one then. Oh God. Okay. Well, I'm gonna have to say I'm gonna ally up with Leprechaun just because I know that he can pull some tricks out of his bag that are probably gonna be able to subdue or possibly defeat Angela and Charles Lee Ray.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna have to go with Leprechaun, and I feel like we would have a pretty good chance against them.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
don't
that's
know.
that's it. No, I think that's a good call. Whereas when Charles Lee Ray has to do something supernatural, he's got to have a chat with Dumbala, right? He's got to try and make a deal. He's got to go through some sort of ceremony. I think the leprechaun's magic's a little bit more
It's a little bit more
inherent.
straightforward, you
Yeah, he's
know? Yeah, he doesn't have to do the whole summoning thing, and then, he's also not deteriorating after a couple days. I got to get out of this doll body. I'm bleeding. It's like, if you wait Chucky out long enough, the dude's just gonna die. You
yeah,
know, Angelina, I mean, I'm sorry, Angela. You could probably catch her slipping, around the Camp Arawak, here or there, especially with the leprechaun on your side. So I feel pretty good in my choice.
you made it. You've made a good team up there. I think we'll go for. And now, of course, our most important question of all, the greatest amount of pressure that
Oh,
anyone who calls
okay.
themselves a horror fan can be,
Let's
especially
go.
a filmmaker.
Okay.
Right, so set the scene. We're doing a podcast called The Horror Hangout here, so we're going to put one in your very house. You've got the words come out. Jeremy, you're putting on a horror hangout for the evening. You've got a mixed group of friends. They're coming round. They've said to you, you're a big horror movie guy. We're going to trust you to choose the movie or movies that we're going to watch on this horror night, and we're going to be judging you on your choices. What are you putting on
Mm,
for them?
wow. Okay, well, I have a couple follow-up questions for you first. So how seasoned are these horror fans that are coming over? Are they
Mixed
hardcore
mixed
or
mixed group. So they'll have seen your big movies at the cinema, but a mixed crowd.
mm,
So they're not all your grandmother, but they're not all like teeny boppers who've only seen K-pop Demon Hunters. They are a mixed group.
ooh, wow. You said there was no hardball questions, but I'm feeling this is a little
This is a
hardball
tough
right
this is a
now.
tough one, right?
Wow.
But I know you're up for it. I will allow you to have a double feature if you're feeling indecisive, but if
I can
you
do a double?
if you're
Okay.
calling a double feature, then you've got to tell me what snacks you're feeding them in between movies.
Okay. Since we're on the subject of slashers a little bit, I feel
And that's
like
what
I would
people know
have to
you for, right? You've got to play that card.
I feel like I got to put one of those in there. And I feel like I can't just go with one of the traditional ones. Now, given it's a mixed group of people, but I also don't want to bore the hardcore horror fans that would have seen, Nightmare on Elm Street 3 for the 100th time. So I'm gonna try and throw in a little bit of a deep cut with it a little bit,
Okay.
just to keep the hardcore fans on their toes, but also to introduce the newbies to something that I feel like is one of the best slasher slash horror films of the 1980s, and that's Dark Knight of the Scarecrow.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, I feel like that's a good medium for the group that we have, but also one that's very near and dear to my heart that follows the slasher genre right there. Um, Now I don't know, as a double feature, I would be very inclined to throw another slasher in that list, but I would also want to vary it up a little bit. So I would probably go with something non-slasher related, but I would also probably want to go with something that's a little bit of a deep cut as well. Um, and I'm trying to rack my brain on what that could possibly fucking be. And I'm having a little trouble. You know what? I'm just gonna stick with the slasher thing because I'm already in the slasher mind state. I'm gonna throw another kind of deep cut. Let's jump to the 90s or the early 2000s a little bit. And in between movies, we're gonna eat cherry pie, and that's gonna lead us right into our second feature, Cherry Falls.
Very Falls. Should have got you from your pie choice there, but an excellent choice.
I was trying to hint at it a little bit right there.
Jerry
You got to
Falls,
have the theme food with it too.
Brittany Murphy, right?
Oh yeah, Brittany Murphy. You got Michael Bean as the sheriff in there as well. Very slept on, underrated slasher film from I think the year 2000. I want to say. And coincidentally enough, where I work at, the director of photography of that film, Mr. Anthony Richmond, who is also the director of photography on the original Candyman film, also the director of photography on a bunch of things, had some really awesome behind the scenes stories on the making of Cherry Falls that I'm unable to share, but let's just say very fun times that
Wild
they had
time.
on that set, it sounds like.
Incredible. Well, Jeremy, thank you very much for spending a little bit of your day with me and talking about Meathook here. It's been a pleasure to navigate the scheduling demons and get you on.
I'm glad we are able to finally overcome those demons and make this thing work. And I love hanging out and talking horror, Andy.
Well,
So you
we
were
will
a great
have to
you were a
see if
great
we can we'll have to see if we can get you on probably a hideously early morning on your side. We'll see if we can get a
No,
morning
I'm
set
down.
up.
I will wake up. I will get up early for a little horror hangout. So
Well,
you
we'll get you and your new best mate, the leprechaun, on. And
you say the word, and me and Leppy will be right on board.
sounds fantastic. Well, not only thanks, Jeremy, but thank you to all of you, the people out there, for listening. Thank you in advance. If you go in, check out
Thank
his
you.
work on any of those platforms over on Meathook. Let him know what you think of it. If it's good news, of course. If it's bad news, keep it to yourself. Why don't you? Come on, we live in a civilized world. But yeah, thank you to everyone. Thank you to Acast for
Thank you,
hosting
everybody.
the
Thank you
show,
so much.
and we will see you all next time. Bye for now.
Bye, everybody. Thank you again, Andy.